What? Blue guy is always the leader. You know, at first I felt you were put in charge just for change, which actually hurt my feelings, but
I feel a lot of people get tripped up on the idea that Raphael is the leader in Rise. It's a frequent criticism of the show, but I feel in a lot of ways Raph and even later Leo are not really the leader, and the series does something even more unique than changing who it is. In Rise, the leader is less a fixed role and more a shared responsibility the family all collectively holds. I also think this creates some really interesting implications for the movie and the commentary it makes about individualism versus community care, and how the villains are basically eugenicists.
I am saving this weak planet. I am a gift.
But what's more, watching through the series makes it clear that in addition to Raph being the leader now, any one of them can step up and take his place. Sure, Raph is the self-proclaimed leader, but there are several episodes where he's more than fine with someone else leading things and instead falls back to take orders from them. There are several episodes where one of the other turtles is leading the missions, if they even have them. A lot of times what they're doing isn't so important that they need a group leader since they're just kids, but when they do, the show doesn't really stick to just Raph leading the group, which I find fun and engaging. For example, in the episode Origami Tsunami, the group decides to stop paper thieves as an easy first job, only to initially fail. Leo steps up and leads the group through most of the episode as we see how dejected his brothers are.
Give us the little guy, and you'll walk out of here with your horn still attached.
Shouldn't we also stop him from creating crabmen?
Good note. Okay,
And there are several episodes like this where Raph takes a back seat to his brothers taking the lead. I think it's cool that we can have an episode like Mind Meld, where Donnie is really the one leading the group. Previous series have temporarily toyed with the idea of the others leading the group for an episode of the week, but it's usually portrayed as a walk a mile in another person's shoes kind of plot, only to snap back into the status quo when we see how hard Leo has it. That or Leo is portrayed as inflexible, like in this scene where the other three are tasked with getting across and they all come up with their own unique way of getting by. It's by no means a bad story idea, but not the only one that can work. I think the best episode that illustrates this to me is One Man's Junk. You see, Mikey and Don had plans on using disguises to get dark armor pieces they've been searching for and take charge because they've already dealt with this villain in an earlier episode when Raph and Leo had it. The plot of this episode has Leo and Raph sneaking off doing their own thing, thinking that plan isn't going to work. In reality, neither of their plans work and the boys end up coming together and brainstorming a new one while Raph specifically apologizes for going behind their backs. They all make it clear that they still respect input everyone else has to make, and it's very sweet. Another point is that Rise never really has the boys training or ranking or sparring against each other. The closest we ever get is the episode Sparring Partner, where it's less actual formalized practice and more capture the flag and roughhousing. It doesn't take a lot to assume that Raph is physically the strongest of the group, so it doesn't even try to rank the boys, but instead points out how this new friend was a big deal to Raph because he doesn't have to constantly monitor himself for once. At the end of the series, they declare that Leo is the leader now, but honestly it doesn't change anything. Leo in previous iterations is usually portrayed as a devoted leader and the most disciplined of his brothers, but because they're not formally trained here, Rise portrays Leo as more a quick-witted trickster who relies on guile and persuasion. The focus on the mastery of their mystic weapons is an underplayed subplot, but it directly ties to the insecurity Leo displays from feeling like his worth is tied to his achievements. Also, many trickster characters historically are queer-coded, so like... Leo is deeply insecure, and his weapon of choice is not just a comedy tool and even a tool for writing new fight scenes, but directly ties to his personality and fighting style. This isn't even the first time this kind of idea has been done, as I'd argue part of the inspiration is drawn from his portrayal in Season 5 of the 2003 series. You see, Leo undergoes a similar subplot where the boys are being trained by the Ninja Tribunal to fight the return of a demonic shredder. They are incredibly abusive, at one point flat out telling all the acolytes that their lives are worthless and should be sacrificed for their cause, and putting them through brutal training for them to master their magic. Leo struggles the most out of everyone as his brothers all demonstrate their abilities at least once, while Leo feels he continually fails. And it's not just failure, but failure at something he's generally portrayed as the most disciplined at. There's one episode where they all have to reach into a pit of fire to receive new weapons, and when it's finally Leo's turn, the fire goes out, and he's the only one who doesn't get a weapon. And that only amplifies his insecurity even more. In the end, Leo ends up manifesting what the instructors point out is an exceptionally rare dragon avatar, has a strong payoff to an extremely powerful and mystic abilities, and I've always liked this concept but never felt it was a fully realized idea. I won't tell you this is an amazing season or anything, but I bring this up to say that I find taking this direction with a Leonardo who, rather than being portrayed as disciplined and the most powerful of his brothers, is instead insecure and lags behind them, is a really unique angle to take. Rise, I think, takes the same concept and brings out the full potential in what kind of portrayal you get with this, and even gives him an ability that matches. His portal sword takes that idea to the extreme and creates an entire subplot about Leo struggling and feeling like he is falling behind his brothers. The guys all have their own distinct fighting style and share struggles that come with having magic weapons. Raph is probably the easiest to graph because the boy wears his heart on his sleeve. While he has those cool scenes of getting to show off how strong he is or the sheer scale of how hard he can strike the bad guy down, the most emotionally powerful scenes are the ones where Raph is almost always protecting or rescuing his family. Rise Raph differs a bit from previous incarnations who are also protective but were less hesitant to retreat. Rise Raph, however, will back his family out of a fight the moment he thinks they're in too deep and will go to any length to keep them safe. He's a shield first, not a sword, and his weapon can be used in both ways, but he makes his priority very clear. I don't even feel this is new because I always feel that people reduce Raph down to abusive anger. Rise Raph is still very much an angry boy. I feel it also oversimplifies Raph in previous versions because while he was impulsive, Raph has always been very capable of being compassionate, loving, gentle, and kind. Mikey is often portrayed as the fastest and most nimble of the group. For instance, they contrast him with Raph in the first episode where the two are dodging boulders coming at them and Raph barely makes each jump and gets hit with multiple rocks, while Mikey is shown to have a more relaxed expression and looks like he could take more. Additionally, while the guys are shown to gradually build on their weapons and have trouble tapping into them properly, Mikey really doesn't have this issue because he doesn't struggle to get his weapon to work properly at all. He's got it down right after the first episode, while Leo takes about half the season just to get his portals working consistently. Mikey's biggest struggle is in balancing a hard-to-wield sentient weapon with his already nimble movements. Previous series have either toyed with or outright told us that Mikey has the most natural talent of the group, but I think it's cool that here it's a more fully realized concept, even if we were robbed of several great ideas with the boy. We all know those cool scenes where he throws an entire freight ship or a skyscraper, but it's also worth noting he just casually tried this with their vehicle when they were about to crash. Leo even tried saving the day, but it didn't work how he planned, and Mikey low-key carried the team in this episode. Donnie, of course, doesn't have a magical weapon until the series finale, but this also gives him a third-person perspective since he's watching the others practice. There's an episode where he makes gifts for everyone, and while the guys didn't like them, Donnie did accurately identify every single thing that went wrong for them, but the gifts he made comes across as insensitive to the guys. In Leo's case, it's physically harmful. Donnie identifies the right problem, but arrives at the wrong solution. It's also not as simple as Donnie not knowing anything because there wasn't a hint of malice in his gifts. He doesn't get a chance to communicate what they do or how they work, and even then, the problem kind of solves itself because Donnie recognizes how they utilize the gifts in unintended ways that they just adapt to their strengths in their own way, rather than relying on one rigid solution. And I really like how they handled this entire episode, especially considering that Donnie is autistic coded. But of the guys, the most blatant and long-running characterization of the new weapons, it shows itself with Leo's portal sword. Now, portal swords sound really cool and look fun, but they're extremely difficult to use, especially in a fast-paced fight, and it shows. He's the one who struggles the most with his mystic weapon and takes the longest to master it. Furthermore, creating portals isn't even that unique of power in the Rise universe, as all the major villains and even several side characters are shown to be able to do it as well. The episode My Notes Are Maze opens with Raph and Mikey showing off their developing skills with their weapons, and Leo failing to do anything flashy with his portals. It's a large point of insecurity for him, which is what drives him into wanting to bring his brothers into a death maze for a prize and be labeled a champion. The maze has a rule that you're not allowed to use magic, so it creates a scenario where he feels like they're on even footing. It's not his battle skills, but his guile and manipulation that gets them out of the situation and gets them to pizza, even if they end up on the Hall of Shame photo. You can see the gears turning in his mind through the change in expression and when he catches on and actively tries to manipulate Cree Summer. There are several gags and bits where you can tell what he's trying to go for, but it just doesn't come together in the way he intended because he can't pull the portal off, or even when he does, it doesn't guarantee things will play out how he intended. Apart from using the swords as regular blades, his portals don't directly harm his opponents, meaning that they are almost entirely reactive, opportunistic weapons that require him to utilize whatever is around him. Fight scenes with Leo as a result become a game of chess, where he has to either manipulate everyone and everything around him to his advantage, look for ways to use his portals to capitalize on his opponent's mistakes, or transport people to safety. Leo is not a disciplined warrior now, he's an opportunistic trickster. Leo didn't win here because he was disciplined or even because he was the strongest, but because he outsmarted his opponents. This ends up translating in how the movie introduces another factor in looking at his insecurities by introducing the colonization and eugenics of the Krang. Part of what makes the Krang so terrifying in the movies to me is that they directly reference eugenics. Multiple times even. The Krang aren't just taking over the world, but believe themselves to be bettering the population by eliminating weak, undesirable traits and assimilating humanity into possessed monsters.
And now, our glorious crusade continues to restore the natural order of things. The strong will devour the weak.
The Krang describes himself as a gift for controlling Raph and genuinely believes he's been better. The Krang themselves underwent eugenics in their imprisonment and positioned themselves as inherently superior for it. Anything about eliminating the weak or undesirable or talk of survival of the fittest is an alarm for a eugenicist thinking. A lot of alien invasion movies have a distinct history of being used as an allegory or a commentary on colonialism, so I've always loved the reads that address Leo's self-worth issues that go into that. The Rise movie is especially interesting because a lot of Euro-colonial fears showed themselves in alien movies, because there's this sort of assumption that aliens would just immediately start killing, erasing, and colonizing you. Rise is interesting because it is an alien invasion film like many others, but Leo's emotional struggle creates a new layer of commentary. The movie, as a result of Leo's personal struggles with his insecurities, ends up being a clash of Leo's collective community support versus the Krang's hyper-individualist eugenics. The phrase, "it's not about you," or some variation of it is repeated several times in service of this.
It's not about me.
Dang it, Leo. Everything's not about you.
My son, listen to your team. This is not about you.
I realized it wasn't about me. This wasn't about me. It was about all of us doing what needed to be done.
You see, eugenics goes hand in hand with individualism, which the Krang openly boast about constantly. The Krang villain directly contrasts Leo in that he has a family unit as well, openly referencing Krang 2 and 3 as his siblings. However, they don't really show or display care or concern for one another and instead see each other as convenient allies to impose themselves on the rest of the world. The Hamato family manages to get by entirely through prioritizing, protecting, and providing care for each other, and supporting each other through collectively contributing their strengths. All four of the boys are committed to their family, their community, so much so that they'll willingly sacrifice or risk their lives if it means protecting the others. During the movie, when Raph makes a choice, he decides to back out, knowing the danger of leaving the key in their hands. When forced between keeping the world safe and the lives of their family, he chooses his family. I describe the Rise movie less as Leo growing into a leader and more Leo respecting the group relationship that's always been there since day one. It's a very community-oriented approach to leadership rather than assigning the role to just one guy. Movie Leo immediately takes to an individualistic "we're doing this because I said so" approach to his leadership, where he ignores input from everyone else, and it's appropriately framed as a harmful thing he's called out on. The movie takes a common action movie trope where a loved one is kidnapped and it's up to the hard and badass protagonist to tear through hordes of enemies to get them back. In fact, Splinter did exactly this and only surrendered in the end for his family. Funny enough, Cassandra did solo these aliens considering she's taking selfies beating the shit out of them. The military couldn't fight off the aliens, but Cassandra protected the girls, uses her weapon as a selfie stick, and is seemingly uninjured. She's built different. Leo's doing this largely to make up for his own mistakes, but refuses input from others, and his insecurities in response to his prior mistakes are expressed in an unhealthy and harmful way. Things don't work for them until he shakes this and shifts his thinking. In the end, he never actually came up with some major plan on his own. He just does what they've always done, and the entire group collectively forms a plan. The movie isn't about Leo learning to lead a group per se, and more about him learning to better respect the group dynamic that's always been there, and recognizing the harm his insecurities causes and actively challenges the harmful perception he has of himself. Instead, he supports everyone in collectively contributing to a plan, but this isn't new for them. They did the same in coming up with an idea on how to defeat the Shredder by forging new weapons in the series finale. Raph felt it was solely his responsibility, albeit for different reasons, to prepare everyone. All the boys make multiple, huge sacrifices for each other because they don't see themselves as independent, powerful individuals the way the Krang do. And the scary thing is, the Turtles don't actually defeat the Krang. In the end, while they managed to seal the main guy away, they never managed to defeat him in a fight, even with magic, even when they've gotten formal training and are stronger than ever. Not once. Even in their fight scenes, the climactic moment of their fight scene is them combining their powers for a super attack and then shielding each other with their lives when that doesn't work. They sacrifice their comfort and continue protecting each other with their bodies if it means keeping each other safe. It goes in firm rejection to the Krang's eugenics and are even willing to sacrifice their lives out of love for their family. Everything about the family is a narrative rejection of individualism and eugenics. You don't have to be the strongest or most perfect in the world. A functional unit is not built on hyper-individualism. Your strength comes from respecting the dynamic of your community and learning to rely on them. Even when Leo is the leader, Raph jumps in when he sees the situation calls for it and is still taking the lead. Finally, there's a really nice deleted scene that touches on this idea as well, that indicates that Raph didn't even want to be the leader and Leo doesn't want to either. They both find it very scary and stressful, understandably so. It's a large part of why everyone on the team shares the responsibility, but from a writing perspective, it also gives the story a lot of variety if at any point anyone can be labeled the leader. The Rise movie, whether intentional or not, creates a narrative about community care and protection in the face of eugenics and individualism. It doesn't mean you need to literally sacrifice yourself or give everything up about yourself, but recognize that community strength allows for others to protect and support you. They really evolved the role and concept of leader in Rise, which is something I wish they got more credit for.